This is Joshua Maria Garcia, and I'm back with a new Hebrew course for you for free here on YouTube. This is Reading Jonah, Learning Biblical Hebrew in Context. Jonah is one of the more simple books to read in Hebrew, although I hesitate to use the word simple because when we are diving into actually understanding biblical Hebrew from just being able to decode and maybe read it, it's quite a jump. But this course is designed to help you make that jump from just learning how to read into actually beginning to understand what you're seeing. So here's your introduction to the course. This is a basic introduction to biblical Hebrew grammar. It's not comprehensive in the way that a university grammar course would be, but it gives you the concepts you need to be able to approach the text in a more meaningful way than just being able to sound out the words. There's about 250 words in the vocabulary for this entire course. I don't know if that will seem like a lot or a little to people, but Jonah is 4 chapters long, so 250 words is not bad. This course does assume basic reading skills, so if you can't read Hebrew, this course is not for you. However, I have another course called Summer Hebrew Reading, which you can take in any season, and it's also available for free on YouTube. It's 6 lessons long, and yes, you actually learn how to read Hebrew in 6 lessons, and people have responded really positively to that. So if you haven't learned how to read Hebrew yet, go take those lessons first and then come back here. If you have taken those courses, those lessons, this course will actually reintroduce you to some of those concepts and then deepen those concepts for you before we dive deeper still. Additionally, we are learning grammar in context here, and here's the really important key. You can go learn grammar from a primer book on your own. You don't necessarily need to take a class to do that. It's certainly harder to learn by yourself, but you can do it with a book. This is not about learning grammar in a book. This is about being able to read the Bible, and that requires a totally different approach. You can memorize all the verb tables you want. They won't really enable you to read the Bible. You need some reading strategies to be able to do that. So this course is really about acquiring vocabulary and basic grammatical understanding in order to cultivate those reading skills. You can memorize verb charts later. So we're calling this Lesson 0 because it's mostly review with a little bit of expansion of concepts that I've taught before. Let's review the alphabet, and it is important to know the names of the letters, the sounds they make in the traditional order of the alphabet. There are reasons why in the Bible, and we'll get to those eventually. So we have Aleph, which is usually silent and carries a vowel. Bet, which can make a b or v sound. Gimel, which makes a g sound. Dalet, d. Hey, h, although it tends to be silent at the end of a word. Vav makes a v sound. It can also act as a vowel, o or u. Zayin, z, chet, ch, tet, t. Yod, y, can also participate in a vowel, especially e, I, a. Kaf, which can be a k or ch sound. Lamed, l, mem, m. Nun, n. Samech, s. Ayin, also silent in our standard pronunciation scheme here. Pe, p or f. Tsadi makes a ts sound, like in pizza. Kuf, k. Resh, r. We're rolling our r's in standard pronunciation. Shin, which can be a shin or a sin, making a sh or a s sound. Remembering that when we write out the alphabet, we write these as one letter, but they're really 2 separate letters. And finally, tav. And again, we're using standard pronunciation here. I got some feedback from my first video series that I am using the wrong pronunciation for biblical Hebrew. That's true. But that's because no one uses classical pronunciation for biblical Hebrew in the real world, in spaces where people are reading Hebrew together, studying Hebrew, praying in Hebrew. They're using this standard pronunciation most of the time. So we're learning what's useful here. If you want to read historical reconstruction and have that kind of pronunciation, Go to school for that. Here's our letters that change, our common changing letters, meaning that they make a different sound with a different placement of the dot. And these are different kinds of dots, but yes, they all make a change in the sound of the letter. So with bet, we have bet and vet, or b and v. Remembering these are the same letter, but the sound of the letter can change. Kaf, we have kaf and chaf, k, ch, same letter, the sound can change. Pe and fe, p, f, same letter, the sound can change. Vav, v, o, u, usually this is the same letter, the sound can change. And shin, sh, s, these are actually two different letters, phonologically speaking. So shin is never going to change into sin, and sin is never going to change back into shin grammatically, whereas these ones are going to be changing places with each other all the time. Remember our little trick for pronouncing vav. Which of the vavs is it? V by itself. She gets hit on the head with a rock. O. She gets hit in the belly with a rock. U. O. U. And you can even tap yourself on the head and in the belly to remember. Okay, 5 of our letters have a final form, a form that comes at the end of a word. So kaf has a kaf sofit, or final kaf, which is typically going to be a ch sound, although sometimes it is a k sound. Mem has a mem sofit, final mem. Nun has a nun sofit, final nun. Pe has a pe sofit, final pe. This is always going to be a f sound, so it's really fe sofit. And tsadi has a tsadi sofit. Let's review our vowels. We have shva, which is silent. However, really, what I want you to learn about shva in this course is that shva ends a syllable. It ends a syllable. And so it's not really 100% precise to say that it's silent, but sometimes it seems that way. So we'll see shva in action a lot more in this course. Kamatz makes an ah sound most of the time. Patach, ah. Chataf, patach, ah. And notice that your chataf letters look like a vowel combined with a shva. That's because that's what they are. So that's going to be important in that course too. We're going to be exploring why that is that way. Okay, chirik. This is an E sound. Tserei, A. Segol, E. And chataf segol, E also. Now we have cholem, O. Cholem vav, O. Shuruk, U. And kubutz, U. Our vowels get more complex when we combine them with certain consonants. So, kamatz yod, think of ay, ay, ay. Patach yod, ay, ay, ay. You hear how the vowel sound is combining with the consonant sound to make what's called diphthong, basically a 2-sound vowel. I, and this one, it looks like I've, but it's actually av. We drop that yod right out, and this only happens in Hebrew in one suffix. Okay, chirik yod is E, no change there. Tzerei yod A, no change there. But segol yod, we expect y, right? Y. But again, when we combine those two sounds, we get A. So E, A, A. And here we have our favorite sound in Hebrew, oi, and another single suffix, ui. Even a little bit more complicated. Now, we know that our chataf vowels typically sound like the vowel that they are combined with. So, chataf patach makes an a just like patach. Here we have segol, and chataf segol is just like segol is e. But kamatz, when it becomes a chataf kamatz, makes an o sound. So actually, we're going to read this word down here first, where the kamatz is making an a sound. And this is ani. ani, and it means poor as an adjective, like describing something as poor. Yeled ani, a poor boy. But this word up here has a chataf kamatz. This vowel has been shortened, and it's pronounced oni, oni, and this means a poor person. So you could say yeled ani, poor boy, or you could just say that hu oni, he is a poor person. Another situation in which a kamatz becomes an O sound without adding a shva in there is when we have a closed, unstressed syllable. And we talked about this in the previous course, but it's really important to review this because it's a little bit complicated. So we expect this word to sound like chachma, chachma. But this syllable, chach, is a closed syllable. What that means is that it ends in a vowel, in a consonant rather. So chach ends in a consonant. It's closed and it's unstressed because, as with most words in Hebrew, the final syllable is stressed. Chachma, chachma. So what happens to that kamatz in its closed, unstressed syllable is it becomes an O sound. Chochma, chochma. Same thing down here. We expect karban, karban, but this syllable, kar, is closed. It ends with a consonant sound, r, kar. And so it's also unstressed because the stress is on the final syllable, ban. So we expect karban, karban. Instead we get korban, korban. Chokhmah means wisdom. Korban means a sacrifice. Another slight shift in some of our vowels is called patach gnuva. It's like a stolen patach. Gnuva means stolen. So here's our patach, a sound, right? But sometimes when a guttural letter comes at the end of a word, it actually ends up taking on a patach gnuva. And the reason why we call it gnuva or stolen is it's kind of sneaky. It's also called furtive patach, furtive meaning sneaky in English. And so it sneaks in before the consonant sound. And so we expect ha, cha, and ah here, but we really get ah, ach, and ah here. Instead of coming after the consonant sound like most vowels do in written Hebrew, it comes before the consonant sound. And this is just these three letters at the end of a word. And now notice also this isn't your typical hey at the end of the word that is silent. It's actually a roughly breathed hey or mapik hey. You can hear it at the end of the word. So this isn't Eloah, this is Eloah. You hear the hey at the end, Eloah. And notice also that the stress doesn't end up on that patach gnuva because she cannot take the stress. So we get Eloah, Eloah, not Eloah. That's not the same word. Eloah. We get, and that's God. That's one of the names of God in the Bible. And here we get koach, koach, not kocha, not koach, but koach. And that is power or strength. Nuach, nuach is rest. Mizbeach, mizbeach is an altar. Mashiach, mashiach literally means smeared, but the connotation there is smeared with oil, so this is an anointed one or Messiah, Mashiach. And Rea, Rea. It's hard to hear the ayin because we pronounce it as silent in standard pronunciation, but classically you would hear the consonant ayin after that patach gnuva, and it would sound like rea, rea, and you really hear the ayin at the end there. But nowadays we just say rea. Here's some practice verses. And this is a little bit of an assessment because these verses came from the last course. So if you can read these, even just slowly sounding them out, then you're ready for this course. If you can't read these, this course is probably going to be a little fast-paced, and I recommend going back to the previous course to review or learn reading there. let's read these practice verses. You should pause now if you want to try reading them on your own. And as we read, I want you to pay attention to where the stress is on each of these words. Ra'iti et oni ami asher b'mitzrayim. Ra'iti et oni ami asher b'mitzrayim. I saw the poverty of my people, which is in Egypt. Next verse. Vaychulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzeva'am. Vaychulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzeva'am. And they were finished, the sky and the earth and all their legion. Milifnei Adon chuli aretz milifnei Eloah Yaakov. Milifnei Adon chuli aretz milifnei Eloah Yaakov. Before the Lord, tremble, earth, before God, Jacob, or before the God of Jacob, really. Piha patcha v'chochma v'torat chesed al leshonah. Piha patcha v'chochma v'torat chesed al leshonah. Stressed? You might be thinking, isn't stress final in Hebrew? But not always. There's lots of reasons why stress might not be final. And here are almost all of the examples. I actually missed one down here, where the stress is not what we expect for our typical rule of final stress in Hebrew. And so if you were hearing me make all these strange stress choices and you're wondering why are they putting the stress on all these syllables that are not at the end of the word, here's some reasons why stress changes when we're reading. So here are some verbs. Now, I don't expect you to know that these are verbs yet. I'm telling you that they're verbs, but once we know what a verb looks like and which words are verbs in Hebrew, which is most of them, by the way, stress patterns change, and we can anticipate changes in stress patterns based on verbal paradigms. So to say that in a much simpler way, verbs have their own stress patterns, and they will follow those stress patterns no matter what you try to do to them. So ra'iti, I saw. Chuli, tremble as a command to the earth. Tremble, O earth, before the Lord, right? Those verbs have their own stress pattern that are based on how they are conjugated. I also am realizing that I didn't translate the last verse for you, so let's go back. Pia patcha v'chochma v'torat chesed al leshonah. Her mouth opened with wisdom, and a Torah, a law or a teaching, a guideline of mercy or loving kindness or loyalty was on her tongue, leshonah. Now, you'll also notice another exception to a rule we know here. We had chokhmah here, vechokhmah, with wisdom. Her mouth was opened with wisdom. And chokhmah, we have o here, kamatz katan, because the kamatz is in a closed, unstressed syllable. We expect vechachma, we get vechokhmah, right? But this same phenomenon seems like it should be happening back here. We expect patecha, but because of the kamatz katan rule, this should be potecha. However, there's this little stress mark here. It's not really a stress mark. It's to tell you that the kamatz is not actually changing. And you'll see this mostly in Jewish prayer books. Not so much in Hebrew Bibles because there's other things going on in Hebrew Bibles that help you there. But the reason why that kamatz doesn't change is because it's part of the paradigm of the verb. This is a verb. Her mouth was open, right? Or opened, really. And so the kamatz there doesn't actually change because the verb paradigm here is ah. We want ah as the vowels, and they're going to stay ah no matter what. So stress and even vowels are really going to follow verb paradigms as much as possible. Another reason why the stress of a word can change is that it's part of a construct phrase, and we're going to learn about what construct and absolute nouns are in a later lesson. But for now, we're going to pay attention to this. This is a makef, or a dash, and it connects to words, typically nouns, but sometimes other small words, in order to show that it's really one pronunciation unit. So this is not going to necessarily be pronounced as et oni, but as etoni, really kind of quickly together as if it were one word, etoni. Here again, we have a kamatz katan here, by the way, v'chol tzeva'am. And this is actually why the kamatz in kol, or chol, is a kamatz katan, because it's always part of this construction with a makef. And so if we're considering this as one unit, then this is actually in a closed unstressed syllable. Even though this is a word that can stand by itself, it's not standing by itself here, so it's technically an unstressed syllable in this larger unit of pronunciation. So instead of v'chal, we get v'chol tzeva'am, because chol is actually unstressed. Al lishonah, nothing particularly special there. The stress is going to come all the way at the end of the phrase. Okay, dual nouns like Mitzrayim, the name of Egypt, is a dual noun. It has an ayim ending. Those ones are going to have stress on that last vowel of the stem. B'Mitzrayim, not B'Mitzrayim, but B'Mitzrayim. So when you have that ayim ending, it's going to be ayim, not ayim. Ayim, B'Mitzrayim. And Hashamayim, the sky, Hashamayim. The stress is not at the end there. It's actually penultimate stress there. And then, of course, we have the patach gnuva that we talked about in the previous course and here, where the stress can't go on the final syllable because patach gnuva does not take stress. She can't handle the stress. Eloah, Eloah, not Eloah, Eloah. So it moves to the penultimate position. And finally, we have the nasty segolets. These ones are the hardest I feel for my students to wrap their minds around, but it's okay. Most of our segolets are going to be 3 letters in their just uninflected basic stem form. Although this actually is an inflected form, but usually we would expect eretz for land. Here it's aretz, and there's complicated reasons for that we'll cover in a different course. But aretz here, initial stress, and we can see the 3 letters of the stem with a segol on the second letter, and those are hints that this is a segolit noun that has initial stress on the stem. Now, it's initial stress on the stem, and I've been very careful to say that in the previous course and now, because when we add veha and the, we're not moving the stress to the beginning of the whole word. The stress stays on the first letter of the stem and the land. Veha-aretz, veha-aretz. Right? Not veha'aretz or veha'aretz, but veha'aretz. That's where the stress is going to stay. And here we have a construct form. We have 2 nouns, and we have a segolit as the second noun. So it's not v'torat chesed, rather it is v'torat chesed. V'torat chesed, pronounced as one unit, but the stress stays on the first letter of the segolit stem. So remember, features of the segolit. This is from the previous course. We're still in review here. 2 syllables in the singular, initial stress, second syllable, usually a segol, but it doesn't always work out that way. So we have ohel, tent, boker, morning, mavet, death. Notice the initial stress here. Melech, king, and na'ar, young man, or lad, sometimes it's translated. Na'ar, so that segol has actually changed to a patach. Guttural letters always cause problems. Yes, they do. And here we're expanding our understanding a little bit from the previous course. These are the guttural letters in Hebrew, and we use this little phrase. It's kind of a trick, a mnemonic device to remember what they are. Ha'ach hara, the bad brother. Ach is brother, ra is bad, right? Ha'ach hara, the bad brother. And so these are all your gutturals, hey, aleph, chet, hey again, resh, and ayin. Ha'ach hara, the bad brother. And so we have seen so far today how gutturals affect patach knuva and segolit nouns, but we also want to watch out for shva and dagesh because shva is not appreciated by gutturals. And you'll notice that these chataf vowels tend to appear most under gutturals because the gutturals don't like shva. So they turn the shva into what's called a semi-vowel by turning it into a different vowel sound. And so here we have ahava. And really, the pattern of the noun demands a shva here. It should be ahva. But Hebrew doesn't like that. It doesn't like the shva on the guttural, so it changes it to an ah sound, ahava. And that's why we have chataf vowels. Now, gutturals really don't like dagesh, so it's even more sort of interesting there. We'll say interesting instead of complicated. Mayim is the word for water in Hebrew. And if we want to say the water, ha-mayim, but ha is not the only part of the prefix for the. If we want to say the, it's actually ha and a dagesh plus the word. So we have ha-mayim, ha, dagesh in the following letter, mayim, ha-mayim, right? And so in classical Hebrew, you would actually hear the mem as a double consonant. We don't really do that in standard pronunciation. You would hear it as hamayim. And in Arabic, you actually still hear those double consonants. In standard Hebrew pronunciation, we don't make the double consonants anymore. But in writing, we do, if we're writing vowels, we should be writing out the dagesh. And so it's really, hey, patach, dagesh means the, and mayim means water, the water. But if you want to say the father, ha'av, the aleph will not take a dagesh. And so the vowel actually compensates for the loss of the dagesh by changing into a kamatz, and you end up with ha'av. Now, in classical pronunciation, again, you would hear this difference. You would hear hamayim, but instead with av, you'd hear ha'av. And so there's really a change that's happening here in the grammar. We just don't hear it a whole bunch in standard pronunciation. But it's important to know the difference because it's going to help you distinguish between different types of prefixes later on. Okay, here's your practice verses again. I encourage you to pause and try to read them again, applying the stress rules you now know to the best of your ability. Also, repetition just makes perfect, right? So please take this opportunity to repeat the exercise and read the verses. Okay, here's some tips for improving your reading as you move forward through this course. First of all, pay attention to look-alike letters because I find that people stumble the most when they're not paying attention to these subtle differences. Here we have bet, kaf, pei, and vet, chaf, fei. These letters all look very close to each other, right? And they make 6 different sounds. B, k, p, v, ch, f. So remember those mnemonic devices I've taught you. The dagesh acts like a stop sign. It makes the sound stop, right? B, one sound. K, one sound. F, Sorry, p. P, one sound. Whereas without the dagesh, the letters become fricatives instead of stops. So they continue, they keep going. There's friction to a fricative. V, there's our f, right? And so without the stop sign, the letters can keep on going. And that's really how you should be able to tell the difference between them. Some letters also just look like each other in reverse if you don't have a trained eye. And so we do these exercises to train your eye. Fe, so, feet, kuf, right? I can tell that just from looking at the page, but it takes some time to internalize those subtle differences. I recommend drawing these, writing them down next to each other so that you can feel with your body the differences in the shapes of the letters. Okay, we have Gimel. Gimel's going for the goal with its leg right here because it's playing kadurregel or soccer, right? And then we have Nun, which is a little narrow letter here. These are not the same letter, and you don't want to mix them up. Okay, here we have Dalet, which has a dent, right? Next to Resh, which is round. And then we have Chaf Sofit and Nun Sofit. And these are just Kaf and Nun with their feet dropping beneath the line of writing. So again, look at them, see how they're different, notice the differences, write them down so you can feel the difference with your body. These are ways to internalize the differences between those letters. A few more, Ayin, which is our second silent letter in the alphabet, Tsadi, making a tsa sound, and Tsadi also has a sofit form, and these letters get mixed up a lot by my students, so pay attention to them, write them down, internalize, make a chart. You know, when you pick up a book for the first time, find these letters in it and see how that typeface, see how that font is going to distinguish between them. Yod, Vav, Zayin. Yod and Vav don't look super similar in writing anymore, but if you look at older manuscripts, they really do get mixed up a lot. And there are even places in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, even in a Torah scroll, where Yud and Vav will actually be swapped out for each other. So it's almost as if the scribe has actually made a mistake in copying, and that just got sort of put into the tradition. So Yod, Vav, Zayin, make sure you can tell the difference between these. And remember that Zayin is a weapon or a sword, and so it has sort of a hilt. Vav is just a hook. It doesn't have that. Okay, we have Tet, Mem Sofit, and Samech. Remember that Tet is tucked in. Tet is tucked in. Mem is like a mountain with a little climber. Then you get Mem Sofit, which is just boxed off at the end. And then Samech is a circle, right? So we have tips and tricks for remembering these things. Hey has a hole. Then you have Chet. And Tav has a toe. Tav has a toe here. And so this is how we're going to tell the difference between our look-alike letters. I took these examples, or really adapted them from Biblical Hebrew, an Introductory Grammar by Paige Kelly. That's the book I learned Hebrew grammar with in undergrad, in college, and I've used it before to teach Biblical Hebrew. It's a very academic approach to Biblical Hebrew, but it's a great resource for really understanding some of these more in-depth things that we're learning. Okay, here's some of my favorite verses in the entire Bible. Read them, pause now, and read them slowly, paying attention to anything you notice from what we've learned today. And now I'm going to read it slowly to you, so if you haven't paused to practice, make sure you do that. Hashamayim misaprim kivod el, uma'aseh yadav magid harakia. Yom liyom yabia omer, velayla lelayla yechave da'at. Ein omer ve'ein dvarim, bli nishma kolam. The heavens tell, or the sky tells, the glory of God. Now, you might have noticed Hashamayim, right? Dual ending, ayim. The stress is at the end of the stem. Hashamayim. Misaprim, final stress. Kivod el. You have our makif, and so this is one unit. Kivod el. That's where the stress is at the end. The sky tells the glory of God. Uma'aseh yadav magid harakia. And the work of his hands, av here, kamatz yod vav, av yadav. Magid tells harakia, the sky, a different word for sky, firmament, atmosphere. And notice the stress is on rakia, because this is a patach gnuva. And so kia, that's where the stress is going to be. So the sky tells the glory of God, and the work of his hands tell the sky. Now, this is Hebrew word order for you in the Bible. What it really says is the sky tells the glory of God, and the sky tells or declares, a different word, a synonym for tells, the work of his hands. But this is a chiastic structure. We're not going to get into that right now. It sort of flips the word order at the end of the verse. Okay, yom leyom yabia, petach gnuva, yabia omer. This is a segulit noun. Day to day, pouring forth utterance or speech. Ve'laila, now laila, you just have to remember the stresses at the beginning. I don't know what to tell you about that one. Laila le'laila, night to night, yechave da'at, issuing forth knowledge or uttering knowledge. And da'at is actually a segolit noun, and you have no way of knowing that except that it has 3 letters, but that's not very helpful. So you just have to know that da'at has initial stress in this case. Okay, ein omer, there isn't any utterance or speech. Ve'ein dvarim, and there's no words. Bli nishma kolam, without having been heard is their voice or their sound. So their sound is not heard, in other words. Okay, here's another way that you can improve your reading speed, which is don't read out loud. Just listen to me reading and follow along with your eyes, and I'm going to read the text a little bit more quickly. You might not actually be able to keep up, but that's okay. It's important to challenge your brain to follow a little bit more quickly than the level you're actually at, because you're stretching your brain like a muscle. So it's okay if you can't keep at the speed that I'm reading at. That's fine. It's actually good if it's a little tiny bit faster than what's comfortable. So try to follow along, and I'll use my little cursor here to show you where I am. Hashamayim mesaprim kivod el, uma'aseh yadav magid harakia. Yom leyom yabia omer, ve'layla le'layla yechave da'at. Ein omer ve'ein dvarim, bli nishma kolam. How did you do? Let's try it one more time. Hashamayim mesaprim kevod el, uma'aseh yadav magid harakia. Yom leyom yabia omer, ve'layla le'layla yechave da'at. Ein omer ve'ein dvarim, bli nishma kolam. And you'll notice that when you're reading more quickly, you're not necessarily paying attention to every single little stroke in the text, right? Your brain is sort of starting to condense the information, which is a really good sign that you're increasing in fluency of reading. Okay, there are new episodes coming soon. You should expect about 1 a week for the next 14 or 15 weeks, because this is going to be a 15 lesson course. And I'm going to give you homework. Your homework for today is to practice reading in Jonah and pay attention to the stress. So hop over to Safaria or Bible Hub or wherever, or your Hebrew Bible, your physical Hebrew Bible, and just look at Jonah and practice reading within the book of Jonah to get familiar with that text. A little bit of Hebrew reading, even 5 minutes every day, will get you to fluent reading, I promise. It's really just that simple. It's about consistency. It's not about cramming. Cramming does not work, but a little bit at a time really, really does. It's why Duolingo works. Programs like that, they really work if you use them very consistently. They don't really work if you use them super a bunch, but only once in a while. So 5 minutes a day practicing Reading Jonah for the next week until the next video comes out. Additionally, with the future lessons, there will be flashcards. You'll be able to just click a link and use my flashcards for that lesson. This lesson doesn't have any flashcards because you don't really need them, but in the future, there will be flashcards for those lessons. And there will be opportunities to study with me directly on Zoom in the future, so keep your eyes open for that. That's all coming soon. Thank you for joining me for reading Jonah. For Reading Jonah. My Ashkenazi pronunciation comes out every once in a while. I'm Joshua Maria Garcia, and I'll see you soon.